Welcome to the Private Practice Journeys podcast, where mental health professionals learn about the nuts and bolts of private practice by listening to the journeys of 4 therapists that have taken the plunge into private practice. And here's your host, Chris Quarto.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Quarto, and welcome back to Private Practice Journeys. Well, you know, it's amazing to think we're already into October, and this project that I've had for this year, Private Practice Journeys, is nearing the end. We've only got a couple more episodes for each therapist, and then we'll be done with this podcast series. And the whole idea is for you who are interested in going into private practice, just to kind of learn from these 4 therapists who have taken the plunge themselves about what it's like and what you need to consider and how to be successful in doing this and keep a good attitude as well. And I think that these therapists have just done an amazing job along these lines, and there's a lot to learn from. So if you haven't listened to the past episodes, I'd encourage you to do that because they've really shared a lot of valuable information that will help you in your own private practice efforts. Well, today we have Lisa Duez on, who's going to be talking about what she's been up to over the past month to keep her private practice rolling. So without further ado, here's Lisa. Hey everyone, this is Chris Quarto. Welcome back to Private Practice Journeys. And today I am joined once again by Lisa Duez. And Lisa, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Glad to be back.
Well, Lisa, this podcast episode that we're doing today is actually going to be released this Thursday, October, whatever that is, the 20th, I think. And I don't know about you. We're in Tennessee here. We're finally getting fall-like weather. I took a walk on campus today at Middle Tennessee State University, and it was about, I think it was like in the high 40s, which is very unusual because we've just had, 70s for the last couple of weeks. So how's the weather out in Virginia?
It's cold. It's actually cold today, which cold in Virginia Beach is defined as like 60 degrees. And we have no foliage yet, but I did go, took my son. My son is a senior in high school, so we're doing the college tour.
Oh, yeah.
So we did go to JMU, which is in Harrisonburg, Virginia.
That's James Madison, right?
Yes, James Madison.
Okay.
Sorry. And they have a great social work program, and I was surprised. There was not much foliage up there because usually mid-October in Virginia, the Blue Ridge Mountains, Skyline Drive is peak. And it was definitely not peak. So I guess it's going to be a little later this year.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll go back up there.
Very cool. Yeah, that's exciting, isn't it? To do the college tours with your son it's finally real. This is happening. And is this your first child that's gone off to school?
Yeah.
To college?
This is my oldest one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is my oldest one. And so it is a lot to do. It is a lot to do. It is so much. It's a lot, and it's a little daunting and overwhelming. And
yes, it is.
It's expensive.
Well, I can sympathize because many years ago we did the same thing with our kids, and you're right. It is exciting, overwhelming, and you're realizing that it's coming to a realization that you're entering or about to enter a different phase in your own life span. That not only your kids are doing that, but you're kind of entering a different phase of your own lifespan too.
I know. I have one more at home, and he was like, I'll be an only child. And I'm like, yeah, you will kind of be an only child next year somewhere.
Yeah. Well, listen, I wanted to cover some things with you today. We on our podcast episodes for new Journey followers who are just kind of tuning in for the first time. We've been following 4 therapists throughout the course of 2017 who have taken their plunges into private practice. And each month I interview them about different topics. And I have 3 topics today that I wanted to cover with you, Lisa. And the first topic I think is really important for any private practitioner to learn about when they're first entering private practice, and that is learning about systems. And when I use that term systems, basically I'm talking about things that you've had to put into place that are either necessary to run your business or to help you run your business efficiently. And there are different types of things that could count for that, really. But I'm kind of wondering, now that you're in your 8th or 9th month of private practice, what kind of lessons, maybe 2 of the most important lessons that you've learned about setting up systems for your practice?
I was trying to think about this over the weekend, and I think it goes back to, for me, is the 2 things for systems is, the money, what you're collecting, what you're aging, what's coming in, what's outstanding, because then you figure out how much you can pay yourself, and, all of the things that you need to figure out to run your business is based on that.
Right.
And so that would be all the billing and, that sort of thing. And then the other thing is, and I have not tracked this as much as I should over, really started tracking this over the summer, was referrals.
Oh, right.
Who's giving you referrals? I was tracking kind of who was giving me referrals, but I wasn't tracking how many I was getting a week, how many I was getting a month, where they were, I guess to the extent where they were coming from, because I wanted to establish a little bit more of a pattern, so I'm doing that now.
Well, say a little bit more about that, Lisa. Why is that so important to track referrals as a business owner? Why do you think that's so important?
Well, I think for who it is, obviously, is your marketing thing. Who you've reached out to and how it's worked. Is your Psychology Today profile working, the way you wanted to? I was on another directory for a little bit, and I was just not getting the return on investment that I wanted to, so I, got myself off of that one.
Right.
So that's the who, and then the what is, how many? How many referrals are you getting a week? Are you having a slow week? Is it over the summer, or is it around the holidays, or what is those factors that are possibly influencing that, and what do you do about it? If there is anything you do about it, because there is that ebb and flow with private practice sometimes.
Sure.
So, that kind of thing. So that's been helpful.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. For me, the tally of the amount of referrals has been good, because I look at my number of, TheraNest has like a pie chart for your sessions that you've completed, how many sessions you've completed. So I'm at 70%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Completion. Yeah. I think it's good. Kids, people always say, well, there's 50% of people are not going to show.
Right.
But, so I know if I say at 70%, then I know my revenue is going to be decent. But if I'm, lower than that, then I'm like, something's going on, or I got to figure something out.
Right. So
that kind of, I guess data is your friend.
Well, I was just going to say, it sounds like one of the things that you've learned pertaining to systems is the importance of tracking data, even if it's just, basic elementary type of data, like, the number of referrals and things of that nature, but to use that data to help inform decision making, whether it's should I continue going with a particular marketing scheme or marketing angle, and where do I put my money for marketing, and maybe it's not working out as well here, so I'm not going to do that anymore, but maybe I'll try something different. But using data to help you make those types of decisions.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's helpful. And I think, go ahead.
Well, I was just also gonna ask about what you were talking about in the beginning about the whole billing thing too.
Oh yeah.
just kind of keeping track of that, and I just kind of wonder, if I were a journey follower and I haven't gone into private practice yet, but I was thinking about it and thinking, oh my gosh, how do I keep track of this, and how do you do all this? So I'm just kind of wondering how you keep track of the income and billing and figuring all that stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, I have my admin to do all of that.
All right.
But what she does is she reconciles the EOBs, the explanation of benefits. So when we get paid, she, obviously she puts in that we get paid.
By insurance companies.
By insurance companies. And then she puts out, if they owe cover deductibles. We usually try to verify that up front.
All right.
Sometimes we're not good at that, but we usually try to do that. And then, so then I can determine, because from one thing I learned is that I'm the only one that keeps track of my money.
Right.
So she may see my EOBs, but I'm the one that knows what's actually going into my account. I'm responsible. There is nobody else that's responsible. I consult with my accountant, but I'm responsible.
Right.
From there, we can kind of see what's coming in, who's not being paid, and then we get on the phone and we find out what's going on, So you'll get to a point in private practices where you'll kind of understand when you're going to get paid by who. Like I know, Anthem is usually 2 weeks, Optima is usually, another insurance company might be 21 days, another insurance company might be this much. So I can kind of understand the money flow, and that helps with all of the aging. I know if it's an EAP client, it's going to be probably a 30-day thing. So I can kind of tell what's coming and what I already have, so that I can kind of gauge, when I want to go ahead and distribute it to myself or to her or to, whatever. Okay. So, but that came with time. Because in the beginning I was just like, okay, what the heck, and who's getting paid, and now I understand, okay, this part of the month is probably going to be this how much money, and these sessions are coming the next week. Right. But that all came with time.
Right. So you can start, based on patterns, you can start to anticipate how much money you're going to make, when you're going to make it. You had mentioned that term aging, which is basically the amount of time that has passed or has elapsed since before you've been paid, whether it's 14 days, 21 days, a month, however long has passed. And you can get that kind of information and start to keep track of that kind of information, so you have that knowledge, that data, kind of like what we were talking about before, so you can make decisions about how to spend your money, or how much money you have to save to pay your own bills and all that kind of stuff. So that makes total sense. Well, if you were to give somebody who's considering going into private practice a piece of advice about systems, what kind of advice would you give them, Lisa?
Money and referrals are the two biggest things for me. How to, track your money, understand that it's going to get a little wonky for the first 6 months, and then you're gonna just figure out what your own pattern is. Right. And then you'll kind of be able to figure out. What I would also say about money is, I think a lot of private practitioners use that book Profit First, which really talks about, it's a good book to try to figure out how to pay yourself, when to pay yourself. That book advocates for paying yourself twice a month. Okay. And so that's what I've adapted a little bit. And so that would be on the money side. And on the referral side, that's just as important. Because I like to know when I'm in a little bit of a slump. So I know that for me, a normal referral week is 3 to 4. Between EAP calls and competency evaluations, I usually get 3 to 4 new calls. So I know, okay, I've only gotten 1 to 2. Do I need to look at stuff? Is something going on? Sure. Do I need to touch base with this person again? I haven't reached out, so kind of your core people that you go to for clients. It's just, like I talked about last month, it's more about building relationships for me.
Right, exactly. And let me just ask you one other thing, just a real basic thing before we go on to our next topic here. In terms of tracking the money, I might be listening as a journey follower thinking, well, how do you actually do that? I mean, I know your admin probably does that. Your administrator probably does that for you at this point. But prior to you having an administrator, or maybe even now, do you track that like with Excel? Do you have a billing program that you use, or an accounting program that you use to kind of keep track of that? What would you recommend along those lines?
QuickBooks for self-employed is what I use.
Okay.
So you can get it on your phone, which is either a good thing or a bad thing. Just laying in bed, how much money did I get paid?
Exactly.
So you can get it on your phone, but what I like about it is, it tracks your business miles automatically. So if I go out and, do competency evaluation, or I run to the store and get some supplies, it automatically, I could just swipe at the end of the day. Oh, this was a personal trip. This was a business trip. This was a personal trip, and just kind of figure out from there.
Okay.
So QuickBooks is good. And then as the stuff comes through your account, you can categorize it like this goes towards rent, this goes towards whatever. And so that's helpful.
Okay. So we'll make sure and put that.
I think
we'll make sure and put that in the show notes, as well as the Profit First book that you were talking about. Well, let's talk a little bit about.
I'm still trying to get through that book.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen many people talk about it, and I haven't delved into it yet. So
it's definitely a piece by piece thing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about personal branding. How have you branded yourself? How have you made yourself known for who you are in the services that you provide in the community?
I think I was just refining. I like to concentrate on working with, I don't want to say specifically women, but people in recovery that really like to figure out why the heck they used in the first place. So resolving some of the depression and the anxiety and the trauma that goes with it, some of the underlying factors, some of that stuck point stuff. And so I have been speaking that a little bit more as I've gone out. And that's also been a process, because when I first started, I was like, just get the clients in the door,
Yeah.
And then as I just grew to say, oh, I really like this particular client, and this is what they're working on. They have had this issue in the past, and I like that. So anything that I do, speaking-wise or marketing-wise, or, Facebook or, social media, it speaks to what that client needs. And so I'm actually I'm in the process of rewriting my website copy to speak a little bit more towards that population. Right now it's pretty general.
Right.
Well, maybe not so much general, but it's, so I'm speaking a little bit more towards that. So I feel like I've been branding myself, and I did get a logo made kind of with a tagline of recovery and renewal, which is kind of my, what I want to show people, what I want to help people get through, is kind of a renewal in their, life, because recovery is definitely a journey.
Yes.
And so I've been, kind of trying to figure out what would they want to know, how would they want to, what would speak to them, what do they need, what are some of the things that I need to write in my psychology profile that will get them to come to me.
Right.
So that's been my novice branding attempt.
So it sounds like you've actually done a couple of things. You found a type of client that you were really interested in, that seemed to really resonate with you. And then part of the equation too is, once you find who that client is, then trying to find and think about, well, what are their needs? What are their interests? What is it that would really speak to them, as part of your own marketing efforts to them? and how can I place myself in a situation to kind of speak to them about what I do, what I can offer them, and how they would benefit from seeing me for therapy services. So it seems like there are those two elements that are involved there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you're kind of in the process of maybe not rebranding, but just kind of refining, I guess, what you're doing. And I wonder if, when you were first going into private practice, if you made any mistakes or missteps, along these lines of branding, and if you could give somebody a piece of advice who's thinking about going into private practice about this whole branding and marketing, what piece of advice would you give to them along these lines, Lisa?
And I guess speaking from personal experience, I did not necessarily have a niche when I first started. I was more of, like I said, good, so I didn't work on that part of it until probably 6 months into it, when I started to say, I really like this type of client. So maybe what I would say is, kind of have that a little bit more upfront. Mm-hmm. And so I guess the scarcity for me and the fear was that if I narrow myself to just wanting to work with these clients, then nobody will find me. Right. And the truth be told, that I like to work with other people also. I like to work with teenagers. I have teenagers, I have a couple kids, and they're just as good to work with, and I enjoy them just as much. And, I feel like they get the benefit from me just as much, but also, so that because of that scarcity mindset, I was very much like, no, I'm just going to be the generalist until I really have that confidence that people are coming in the door. Right. So maybe, for the next person to right up front saying, you know what, I can do this, and I can be that therapist that only works with, women in shame or whatever, right up front, and knowing that you will get other people 80% of your clients will be, what you want it to be.
Yeah, and what I was thinking along those lines of being the generalist is, I think part of it for some people might be exactly what you were talking about, is it the scarcity mindset that I'm just going to take anybody because I need to make some money, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm, yeah. But I think on the flip side of the coin is some people may need to start out that way to figure out who they want their niche to be. And
that was me.
Yeah,
that was me. I had to start out that way because I did administration, so I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I did start. That was me.
Yeah.
I had to start out with a little bit more of a, just as long as they come in, I'm good.
But now things are rolling, and now you can really start to narrow it down and start to refine what you're doing on your website and all of that kind of good stuff. So yeah, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask about this last topic for our podcast today, which is learning about keeping things in perspective. And what kind of perspective do you have to keep in mind about yourself as a private practitioner? Is this not only that, but just as well as your journey into private practice during that first year. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was telling you before we started, I said, I have an imposter syndrome. So it is a journey, and I guess I'm not gotten to my perspective yet. But on this little imposter syndrome-ish thing that I'm doing right now. But, and that would be because, I had a rough week last week. I had a couple people cancel, and I came in, and I haven't had the referrals that I usually get. And here's the thing, I should not complain because I do get 3 and 4 referrals a week.
Oh, wow.
So there is no reason that I should complain. There is really no reason. And I don't want people to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to hit her or something like that. I do not want people to think that, but you are so, I am not used to feeling vulnerable. As a person. So that's where my scarcity comes from.
All right.
Is that I am not used to being vulnerable. I was an administrator. I ran the ship. And so there was no vulnerability. There might have been some vulnerability, but, it didn't, I always was able to really work through that. So when you have those ebbs and flows where you don't have as many calls and, your people are canceling or they don't want to come to therapy anymore, they need to take a break and blah, 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 blah. That happens on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
That just happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so my perspective is that it is a journey and that, I guess the bottom line is that, I have made it. I have, I'm doing pretty well, I think, so
Mm-hmm.
I just need to keep it all in perspective and that it's just it's a business and in every business, this happens,
Yep.
This might be my little slump, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll find a way to get back up and, you really have to be self-motivating and sometimes you have to be your own cheerleader. You
Mm-hmm.
really do,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it kind of, the ebbs
little
and
coach.
the ebbs and flows you're talking about, it kind of reminds me of the stock market or mutual funds and, how things can kind of go up and down. But if you stick with it, if you just stay in it,
Mm-hmm.
You don't panic
Yeah.
and you just stick with it, everything
Mm-hmm.
evens out. Everything averages out over the long term and it's okay. So, but
Yeah.
I think that you have to be careful of what that scarcity mindset like you were talking about, because it's so easy, especially in the first year of private practice, when you haven't had the experience of understanding the ebb and flow cycles and how that happens, but how things actually will work out. And you're starting to understand that now. Although you had a little bit of that imposter syndrome feeling this past week, but you're understanding from what you just said that there are ebbs and flows in private practice.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like just realizing, like, oh my gosh, and then the part of it was like my husband, he's like, you opened a business.
Uh-huh.
He says, you need to just shut up.
He sounds like he's good for you.
To shut up. Yeah. So he was like, you're doing fine. And I'm like, but they can't, So anytime something happens where you have a client, I had a couple referrals over the past month that were really good referrals, and where my niche clients didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't come in. The
Yep.
one relapsed. And it just didn't work out. They didn't end up coming, and so I was like, ugh. And so I like, you have to just remember that. And so the imposter syndrome comes from, that's my fault.
Uh-huh.
But reality is that they just weren't, for whatever reason, and you don't really are going to get to know the reason, and that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you come to therapy? You didn't come with, did I do something? Well, you never met them, so how could you do something?
Sure.
So it's kind of like the same thing. It's that parallel process of the same thing that you tell your clients. You have to sometimes talk yourself into like that same space.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I think it's important to keep getting consultation. I have a person that, probably I will call later and be like, blah.
But I bet by having that person, that probably does help you keep things in perspective, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I definitely believe in consultation and, just, realizing that this is a journey.
It is.
Definitely.
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's talking about consultation, even the Facebook groups, the professional Facebook groups like Private Practice Journeys or Abundance or any of those groups that you and I are a part of, it's really nice to see that you can kind of get those alternate perspectives from people who have been in the field for a while and can kind of just kind of calm you down and say, hey, this is just part of it. Stick with it. You'll be fine. And it's really nice just to be able to reach out that way too, to get that kind of support.
Yes, it is. It's really easy to just, yes, because you can go in there and you can, you get a little bit like, you get the perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
That you need, and that this is just all part of it, It's just part of it. I mean, it's ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a bad therapist.
Right.
You're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's just for whatever,
Yeah, just stick with it.
Just stick with it.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's
Well, Lisa,
perspective.
if anybody wants to get a hold of you, a potential client, or even maybe a therapist who's thinking about going into private practice and just wants to maybe talk to you about your own experiences, how can people get a hold of you?
Probably the best way is, I'm on Psychology Today, and then the website is just my name, lisadewey.com. And then you can email me directly through the website, and I'm happy to answer, whatever I can. I actually been very happy to get more clients through my website lately, so that's been good.
Very cool.
Yeah. But yeah, that's basically the two ways I'm on Abundance Practice Builders and the Journey Followers, and happy to share what I've learned and not learned and still learning.
Mm-hmm. And just so to clarify, your last name is spelled D-U-E-Z.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it's a French name, D-U-E-Z.
Yes.
Yep, but it's Dewey. Yep.
Okay. Well, Lisa, thanks again for coming on the podcast episode. We're coming to the close of 2017 pretty soon here, and the end of this podcast series. But I really appreciate you being part of this whole time.
Oh yeah, it has been my pleasure. It's been really cool to share my humbled to share my journey, and also to listen and learn from everyone else. And it's definitely not a small thing that we do.
That's right.
So we should be very proud of ourselves.
Okay. Well, until next month, have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Okay. Thanks to Lisa again for coming on the Private Practice Journeys podcast episode and sharing her experiences over the past month. As I was listening to Lisa, and actually all of therapists over this past year that I've been doing these episodes, the thing that really strikes me is that going into private practice, it really is a journey. And I think that one of the last things that Lisa was talking about in terms of keeping things in perspective by understanding that there are ebbs and flows in private practice, that's really important, because it would be so easy to be scared off if, early on into private practice, you don't get the referrals you want, or there are good times, but then the referrals go down, and, but having that perspective and understanding that this is part and parcel of private practice, and you can do this if you anticipate, if you keep track of different types of data, as a private practice owner, that you'll find out that this is not only doable, but enjoyable as well. And but there's a lot to figure out at first. And I hope what you do is you listen to past episodes to learn from the experiences of these 4 therapists who have been on here for the past year. So it'll answer your questions and take some of the guesswork out of starting a private practice yourself, if you decide to do that. Well, if you'd like the show notes from today's episode, please visit my website, chrisquarto.com. Just click on the podcast button when you get to the website, and you'll be able to listen to all those episodes if you choose to. Until the next time, have a great rest of the week.